So this is my game called Bronze Rescue and everything you need to play it. In this game, you're playing as members of the gang from Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and you're trying to rescue victims who have been stuck in the bronze when a bunch of vampires attack. So each player plays as a different character, like we've got Buffy, Spike, Giles, Xander, Willow, and Faith. And what will happen is on this board, these unknowns will be all over the place. And your goal as players is to figure out whether those unknowns are vampires or humans, save all the humans, kill all the vampires. The win condition is to save 7 victims. And you save the victims by carrying them out these exits. So that's kind of the premise of the game. And I'll go over all of the components. The first thing you'll need is the rules. It's about 4 pages, I think, and it goes over the abilities, the characters, the board, the turn sequence, everything you'd want to know with unknowns, some stuff about vampires, and then a few rules about the deck of cards. The next thing you'll need is the board. The board is set up like the bronze, or how I imagine it. I tried to include all of the iconic things in the show. Like, we've got the stage here, we've got the bar, we've got some tables scattered around, there's the backstage, there's a couch, pool table, and then up here's the balcony with a couple tables, and then here are the stairs. There's a couple bathrooms, because everything needs bathrooms. So the board is a grid. There's 6 spaces horizontally and 10 spaces vertically. The way this system works is to place unknowns on the board. You'll roll a d6 and a d10. So, like, for example, if I were to roll a 5 and a 1, I'd find 5 horizontally for the 6-sided dice, and I tried to match the colors. So 5 and 1. So we've got an unknown right here on the stage. Everything on the board, some of it's just kind of decorative. It means nothing, like the pool table and the tables. But the stage, the bar, the stairs, and the walls are kind of important. For the stage, it'll cost players an extra ability power to get up on the stage and get down from the stage. The bar works kind of like a wall that you can cross. It costs an extra ability power to get from this space to this space. And then the stairs, they just act like adjacent spaces. So if a character was moving here, they could just move one more to get right here. And then also, we've got these exits. There are 3 of them, 1 at the front, 1 backstage, and 1 back in the kitchen. And players can start outside of any exit, and that's also where you'll take the victims when you save them. So let's talk about these unknowns that I just mentioned. So at the start of the game, you'll place a lot of unknowns on the board based on the number of players you have. Like, so if you're playing with the max number of 6 players, you have to place 12 of them on the board. If you're only playing with 3 players, you'll place 6 on the board. And I just went over how to put them. And these unknowns, they could be either a victim or a vampire. These vampires, they're not different at all. I just wanted 2 different images. And then the victims all look different, but they've got the same kind of thing going on, where it's a person's head and then some bright colors in the background. So the next thing to go over is the players, or the characters. We've got Willow, who is the resident witch. She casts spells for less ability power than everybody else. Xander, he is kind of weak when it comes to slaying, but he rescues victims very efficiently, and he also has a first aid ability, so he can heal people. Then Giles, since he's kind of the leader of the group in the show, I mean, other than Buffy, I gave him a Watcher ability, and he can use his ability power to move other players, and he also casts spells for a little bit reduced cost, not as much as Willow, but he's still into the spell casting. Then Spike, he kind of acts like how you would expect Spike to be. He runs around slaying vampires, but he doesn't really save them very well. It costs him more to save the victims. And Buffy is very similar to to Spike, except she runs around slaying vampires for the most part, but she's not so great at spell casting, so it costs her a little extra to cast spells. Then I just added Faith, and Faith, she's kind of like Buffy and Spike, where she's got this supernatural agility where they can jump from the balcony to the bottom floor. And then she also must use an extra AP to cast spells. But she's unique because she has this crossbow where she can slay a vampire from range, and it costs her 2 AP. It also costs her a little bit less to slay, but she's not as great of a slayer as Buffy, but she's got that crossbow. The next thing to go over is I've got this deck of cards right here. The cards are either events or abilities. Events, if you draw an event, it happens immediately. It'll say event in the corner and the title, and then it goes over what it does. The first one is just kind of general, and the next is specific instructions. Then the abilities, they don't have to be used immediately. You can use them at any time during the game, or you can use them immediately. They've got the same thing. It says their ability in the corner, a title, and then it says what happens, and then more specifics. And then some of the abilities work differently for different characters, and that's noted at the bottom. Then lastly, we've got these tokens right here. The purple is used as a counter for stuns, and I'll go over stuns in a moment. The green is used if players want to save their ability power for another turn. And it's a way of keeping up with it. And then the blue is for when characters take damage. They'll have a blue token for each point of damage. Then we also have these reference cards for the abilities and turn sequences, or turn sequence. First, I'll go over the abilities. Okay, so when players start their turn, they have all of these options. They can move. For every space they move, it costs them 1 AP. And by the way, I don't know if I've mentioned this, but all the characters start with 6 AP. Then they can slay vampires. It costs 3 AP in general, but for some characters it costs more, some it costs less. And that'll be noted on your character card. Then to rescue a victim, so if you've identified a victim and you reach them, you can take them with you by landing on that space, and then it costs 1 extra AP to move to take them out. Then the next ability is identify. So if you are trying to figure out your strategy and you want to know which unknowns are vampires and which ones are humans, you cast identify for anywhere on the board. It doesn't have to be in line of sight. Then stun. The way my game works is I have the vampires moving towards victims and characters at the end of each player's turn. So the stun comes in handy if one's approaching a victim and you don't want it to reach them. You can stun it, and it'll be stunned until your next turn. So it'll go through everybody's turn and won't be able to move. Then the next ability is heal. When characters are or victims start to take damage, you have the opportunity to heal them, and it just takes away the damage token, like 3 AP per damage. Then the next reference card is the turn sequence. The first thing that happens on each turn is if a vampire shares the same space with a victim or a character, they take 1 damage. The next thing that happens is players have the opportunity to draw one of the cards I was just talking about. They spend 1 ability power to get a card. Some of the cards are good, some of them are bad. Most of them are good, so it's usually beneficial to grab them, but there's also some bad ones in there, so it adds a little fun to the game, I think. Then the next thing they can do is spend ability power. So they spend their 6 ability power on the abilities I just went over. And if they don't use all their ability power and can't think of anything to do with the rest of it, you can just grab one of those ability power counters that I was talking about and save it for your next turn. Then once you're done with your moving, the vampires start to move. So every vampire that's been flipped over on the board so that you can see it's a vampire moves 1 space closer to the nearest victim or player. Then after that, new unknowns and vampires are placed on the board. So the way that works is so at the beginning of the game, you'll have twice as many unknowns as players. Then, your goal is to flip them over and everything. So at the end of each player's turn, there need to be a number of unknowns equal to the number of players. If there are, you place a vampire somewhere on the board. And if there aren't, then you place another unknown, or as many unknowns as players. So that's how that step works.